Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be discussing Zerg versus Protoss scouting. So for this video I'm going to assume that you have seen the previous video, which is how Protoss works. And if you haven't seen that one, I would highly recommend you go check that one out first, because today we're going to go more in depth on how to scout versus Protoss. So like I mentioned, the way we're going to scout Protoss is mostly by eliminating certain possibilities. So let's say we see a lot of gases, we are probably not going to assume it is going to be anything like a gateway all-in. Or let's say we see a robotics facility, we can sort of also imagine there's probably not going to be a Stargate down as well whenever the Protoss is on two bases. Now, what tools does Zerg really have for scouting? So obviously, first of all, there's Zerglings. We're going to use Zerglings to scout important positions. And second of all, which is pretty much the only second option until until we have Overseers out, it's Overlords. So Overlords and Zerglings, that's pretty much the only thing that we're gonna need. And the only real question is where and when. When should we be flying in an Overlord into the Protoss main base, and when should we be scouting with Zerglings? Well, let's have a look at this thing right here. Now, if this video is any relevant for you, you will probably recognize this map, right? It is Belgium Vestige, which is probably, one of the better maps that is out there right now. So let's first up set up how we usually play versus Protoss. So the red dots in the bottom, that's gonna be our bases. So we got 3 bases, which should be, you should be having a standard build order. So you should be having 3 bases, whereas your opponent should be having only 2 up, which is pretty much 99% of the Zerg versus Protoss game. Now, first of all, we're gonna be discussing Zergling scouts. So what should Zerglings be doing and where should you position them? Whenever you have Zerglings out, you could probably have come up with those 2, right? Put them at the watchtowers. Watchtowers are amazing. This is true for pretty much every single map. Whenever you have Zerglings out, there's absolutely 0 reason, that's a 0 right there, that's actually not... There's absolutely 0 reason, that's a 0, Why should you allow a Protoss to have a watchtower in the early part of the game? Never. Unless he's maybe guarding it with a Mothership Core, a Zelda and a Stalker or something, but pretty much 99% of the time, you should be taking all the watchtowers on every single map. Another Zergling, this is actually the most important one, should be at the front of the Protoss opponent. So let's say you want to know when he's moving out and when you need to start producing units. Well, this one is pretty obvious, right? You want to be putting a Zergling at the front of their base throughout the entire game. Now in this case I actually put it right on top of their natural, which is usually where they won't have any units out and where the cannon can't reach. But obviously if the game goes on a little bit longer, you will need to move it down the ramp because the army is positioned down, all that kind of nasty stuff. But you always want to have a Zergling at their front so you know when they are moving out. This is true for every single map out there. And last but not least, you want to have a Zergling at the 3rd base of the Protoss opponent. Now we're gonna go a little bit more in depth in that in a second, but just trust me, you want to have a Zergling at the 3rd base pretty much after the 8-minute mark is gonna be absolutely crucial. So that is pretty much it as far as Zerglings go. Pretty easy, right? I know we now discussed Belgium Vestige, but this is true for all the maps out there. Let's say you're playing on Star Station, same concept applies. You still want to take both the watchtowers that are in like the top and the bottom on that map, and you also always want to have a Zergling at the 3rd and one at their front to know when they're moving out. Okay? That is pretty much it as far as Zerglings go. Now the Zergling part is pretty damn easy, but now it's gonna get a little bit trickier. We will need to decide where we put the Overlord. So this, right there, is where you want to put your first Overlord on pretty much every map. Once again, you want to be sending it to the natural to scout when there is a natural down, and if there's a natural down, you want to hang it somewhere, someplace that you might be able to fly it into the natural of your opponent. Now I know it is tempting to put your second Overlord at your natural to scout for any kind of cannon rush, but honestly, once you start moving up the leagues, this is not something that you want to be doing. Your second Overlord should always be on a position where you can fly it into the main base of your Protoss opponent. So this is going to be the best position on Belgium Vestige. Most of the time you can, it is true for every map, but obviously you will need to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. You don't need to follow the exact Overlord positions, but you just want to keep in mind, you want to fly one into the main base and one into the natural. Now this is also true for most maps. It is what I really like to do, is send my 3rd Overlord to their 3rd base to check out when they take it. So instead of a Zergling that we talked about a little bit earlier, you want to have at least either Zergling or an Overlord spotting the opponent's 3rd base. Okay, so now we have arrived at the tricky part. Yay! When should you be flying in your Overlords? Well, usually a great timing to fly in 2 Overlords, so one in the main, one in the natural, at around the 6.5 minute mark. Why the 6.5 minute mark? Because this is usually the timing that all the Protosses take all their tech buildings. So if they go for a gateway all-in, they will throw down the gateways. If they go for robotics, they will throw down the robotics. If they go for a Stargate, they will throw down the Stargate. 6.5 minutes, keep that one in mind. Now, like I said, we are going to be eliminating possibilities. So we will need to talk about the gas guises, especially at the natural of your Protoss opponent. You can most of the time assume your opponent has the main base gases taken, but what do the natural gases mean? Okay, let's say you fly in an Overlord around the 6:30 mark and you see both gas guises are already taken, there's probes in there, he's already happily mining from that. What does this mean? Okay, first off, he's getting a lot of gas, obviously, right? When you think about it, he's getting a lot of gas up. But what could he be going for this if he already has them taken at the 6.5 minute mark? Well, most of the time it's gonna be something like a super tech heavy play. This means that he's gonna go for something like Dark Templar, maybe double Stargate, maybe double robotics, but something a little bit gimmicky, because most of the time they will not be taking the gases super duper early. So when you fly in there, you see the gases are already operational at the natural base. You will always need to keep in mind that most of the time it's gonna be something a little bit tricky. Now let's say you fly in there and you see the gases taken around the 6.5 minute mark. What this also means, which is absolutely crucial to realize, is that if the gases are taken and he's mining gas that early on, there's absolutely zero, once again zero, chance that your opponent will go for a gateway all-in. It's just not possible. He's mining so much gas, he actually just can't afford to get also like 8 gateways or 7 gateways or even 4 gateways up to support 4 gas guises as well. Unless he's gonna go like 13 centuries, but that is just easily overrun, right? Now the far other end of the spectrum is, let's say you fly in there, you're still flying in there around the 7 minute mark and the gases are still not taken. What does this mean? Well, it means that he's getting a lot of fucking minerals up super quickly. What can he be going for with a lot of minerals? Well, something like gateway all-ins, super greedy third bases, definitely not double Stargate, definitely not double robotics, definitely not Colossus, because he just does not have the gas to support that sort of stuff. Now to put it a little bit in perspective, let's say you fly in there, you see the gas is already being taken. That allows you to drone up really greedily, because there's not gonna be anything like a big gateway all-in, it's not gonna be anything like a 4-gate +1 push or whatever, just because he has all the gases already taken and he simply cannot afford that. So it allows you to drone up until pretty much as you possibly can. Now let's say you fly in there and around the 7 minute mark the gases at the natural are still not taken. That basically means he's saving up a lot of minerals, most of the time gonna be a gateway all-in. So you cannot drone up the third base completely, because you will just straight up die. So even if you get into the main base and you don't see any buildings, but you do scout the gases at the natural, you can still quite easily, especially once you play more games, put your opponent on a certain build order, because basically it is some sort like a Zerg map hack, because you only scout the gas and you can sort of tell what your opponent is going for. Now I have to warn you right now though, I actually, like when I started executing this sort of stuff, people accused me of being a hacker for quite a bunch of time, so I'm going to have to warn you, you might end up in the same boat, because you don't see a Dark Shrine, but you see a lot of gas being taken before the 6 minute mark. You can sort of imagine what is going on. Now what is the standard gas timing right now for the Protoss to take it? Well, usually right between the 6 to 7 minute mark, kind of depends what build he's going for. They want to be taking the gases at the natural. So that is super crucial to realize. Now after you move up in the league, so your opponents get better and you are getting better, you can actually pinpoint the build precisely. So let's say you're like one of the top Korean players, you will know what the difference is between a 6 minute and 20 second third gas versus a 6 minute and 40 second third gas. But we're not gonna go that in depth just yet. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, I'm afraid you will have to do your own little research, because you probably don't really need the video anyway. For now, it is only important to realize that you always need to think really hard. What can my opponent be spending all this gas for? Or what can my opponent be spending all this, you know, not gas for, all these minerals? So in the end, this is something like your bases should be looking like. So you have 2 Zerglings covering the watchtowers. I don't actually know if the radius of the watchtower is that big on this map, but still. You want to be having a Zergling at the front of your Protoss opponent's base. You want to be having a Zergling at the third base to know when he's taking the third base. And you want to have Overlord positioned so you can fly into the main base, into the natural, and potentially, on some maps you can't do this, but potentially into the third base as well. So now we've pretty much arrived at the last point that we need to discuss, which is going to be a third base timing of a Protoss opponent. Now this is a pretty standard time, and pretty much all Protoss players will take their third base around the 9 to 9.5 minute mark. Okay? Keep that in mind, 9 to 9.5 minute mark is when your opponent will be going for a third base. So let's say you get in there with a Zergling and you scout that there's a third base down already at the 8 minute mark. What does this mean? He doesn't have anything to defend that third base at all. Make units go kill it, okay? So let's say you get in there around the 9.5 to 10 minute mark and you still do not see a third base down. You're gonna have to prepare for a 2 base all in, because if he's not gonna go for a third base, what else is he gonna do, right? There's only one other option, which is going to be either a super late expansion, which will put you ahead either way, or it's gonna be a 2 base all-in, which is most of the time, like 90% of the time the case. So yeah, that is pretty much it as far as Zerg vs Protoss scouting goes. I hope this cleared up a bunch of confusion. Keep in mind Zerglings, Overlords, gas timings and 9-minute third base. That is pretty much the most important thing to remember from this video. I want to thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and the favorite button. And also, if you really enjoyed it, you can subscribe for more videos. I try to put up as much content as I possibly can. You know, I still want to have some sort of a high quality standard, obviously. But if you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button and you will get a notification as soon as I upload new videos. Also, have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and hopefully I'll see you again. Bye! Aw, shit. Okay, so that was a little bit... well, that was not as amazing as I hoped it would be. Oh well, let's figure out this one. So this is that room with all the weird stuff in here. And this...